Insurance agents from around the world, welcome to the Insurance Guys podcast. My name is Scott Howell, your fearless host and leader, insurance agency owner and insurance evangelist for I Protect Insurance and Financial Services, based out of Huntsville, Alabama. And before we get started on today's episode, please help me welcome. He is a 6'3" sophomore from Mobile, Alabama, parade first team All-American, Rivals 5-star recruit. He is a fantastic insurance agent and a great American. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome the incomparable Mr. Bradley Flowers. How are you, Bradley?
Let me tell you how tired I am.
Uh-oh.
So when I wake up every single morning, I get out of bed. Luke is usually still asleep. Luke's my 3-year-old. And the first two things I do is I make me a cup of coffee, and I put his oatmeal. I make his oatmeal. Because when he wakes up, about 10 minutes after he wakes up, he turns into a 90s Wall Street stockbroker trying to buy a stock to get his oatmeal. I want my oatmeal, and I want it now. And if it's hot, it's on. So I go ahead and make his oatmeal. That way it cools down, and then as soon as it's cool, I wake him up. So I go in there this morning, I make my coffee. I'm half asleep. I make my coffee. I get the bowl out for the oatmeal. I get the little oatmeal Quaker Oat packet. I rip it open, and I dump it directly into my coffee. And you know, it wasn't half bad.
You may have invented a new thing.
I didn't drink it. I poured it out, but I was like, "Oh my God!" And then my brain went to, "I've got to tell this story on the podcast today."
Hey, Bradley, before we get started, and I got an all-star guest I got to get to in just a minute. Got up this morning. Well, first I drove my 5.5 hours down here last night. Got here about 10 o'clock. But before I left, I looked at the weather down here because I always like to just kind of, you know, anytime you travel, you kind of want to know what you're getting yourself into when you get there.
Our climates are very different too.
Very different.
State, yeah.
So here comes the big reveal. Right before I drove off yesterday, or as I was packing, I looked and saw the Mobile weather today was going to be like a high of 45 degrees the next 2 days. Which, guys, for those that don't know, we've mentioned it a couple times on the podcast. I live about 20 miles from the state line of Tennessee. Now, you can be in downtown Nashville from my house in exactly 2 hours, okay? Bradley basically lives on the Gulf Coast. I mean, he lives in Mobile, but we're not far from the ocean, probably 20, 30 minutes from the ocean. And the climates, as he mentioned, are extremely different, and it's usually a pretty big swing. It's like, I don't know, a 20-degree swing most of the time between where I'm at and where he's at. It's pretty strange. But I got up this morning, and I walked outside, and I'm an observer of people. And I thought it was almost comical how people down here are so not used to cold weather.
Yeah, 45 is about as cold as it'll get.
They were getting out of their cars to go to work today, and their shoulders were hunched over, and they were like speed walking into their offices. And by the way, before I sound like too much of a Billy Badass, because it's been this temperature up in North Alabama for 2 weeks. But before I sound, it's almost like if I went to Buffalo to go see Doug Benz, I would be that way up there. You know, I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, I've never seen cold like this," and he would be like, "Brother, you ain't seen nothing. You ought to see," because I think they've all up there gotten like a foot or two of snow the last few days. So I just found it kind of
in Boston. The day we left that afternoon, it started snowing in Boston. And I was like, thank God we missed that.
Well, guys, I got an all-star guest on today. I am so humbled and blessed to have him on this show. I didn't talk to him on purpose much before we got on, but I will say this. I get the newsletter I believe it comes out every week, and I want to get into what he is all involved with, but I'll just give you a little bit of a Whitman sampler. He and a partner of his, they have the Max Revenue Show. They have the Max Revenue newsletter, which comes to my email address that I read every week. In fact, I think I just got one. I think it was either Friday or over the weekend. I can't remember. I read it religiously. It's got some really, really good stuff in it. But I'm just humbled to have him on the show, and we've got a lot to talk about. And this guy as my dad likes to say, he is a stone bone rattler. He gets it done, and I can't even tell you how excited I am to have him on the show today. Ladies and gentlemen, he's originally from Watertown, Wisconsin, and he currently resides in Austin, Texas. He is married to the beautiful Toria, and they have not one but two beautiful babies, Lucia, age 4, and Koa, age 8 months old. And, those are kind of your ages that you're in right now, Bradley. Y'all are kind of in the same boat together there with
Navy SEAL training.
Navy SEAL baby training. I personally am very glad to be out of those years, but then there's a part of you that looks back fondly on it in some ways. But
you only remember the good.
You only remember the good. That's right. He graduated from University of Wisconsin Whitewater, and here it comes, guys. February of 2011 through September 14th, he was with Federated Insurance as a marketing rep. He's also worked from 2014 to 2021 with Marsh McClellan Insurance. And today, he is with Christensen Group Insurance as an agent and producer. I love the fact that he's done so much of this. He's seen it. He's been to the rodeo. He's seen the clowns. He's done it. He's been there. I love interviewing people like this. He's also written and published a book for insurance buyers, launched a digital sales course for producers, and he is the co-host of the Max Revenue Show podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my profound honor today to introduce first-time guest on the IGP, Mr. Micah Salas. How are you, Micah?
Man, if I wasn't good, I'd be a lot better after that intro.
Dude, let me say this.
Dude, I feel that's awesome. Thanks.
You and I have never met. We don't know each other. I have never talked to you on the phone. I have never spoken to you except for 45 seconds before we came on this podcast. I am so excited to have you on this show today for a lot of reasons. But that damn newsletter that you guys put out and your podcast, Bradley, what would we have done if we'd had something like that when we started an insurance business? Mm-hmm. Instead of nobody wanting to help and handing you a phone book and telling you to call people. That's about what we had. So yeah. I'm just humbled and blessed. Michael, let's start with a start. Let's go all the way back. How'd you get into, I tell you what, just climb in my DeLorean for a minute. Let's go back to 1983. How'd you get into it with Federated? And then just kind of bring us up to today. Give us the 3 to 5 minute elevator speech on kind of how you got in it. I'm sure you're like everybody else. You stumbled, fell off a ladder, and then next thing you know, you work at Federated Insurance. But tell us about it.
Yeah, it's actually kind of an interesting story. So I went to Whitewater and was going to school for business, and I never really liked selling stuff. I actually kind of hated sales, but found myself kind of doing it on the side in college for some money, just telemarketing and that. Anyways, got introduced to Federated in college my senior year through a sales class I was in, and went all the way down the interview process. And if anyone listening has ever done that process, it's like they meet your girlfriend, they meet your aunt, your uncle, your dad. It's like it's thick. I mean, there's probably 5 meetings with them. And the night before the final interview, I called my district manager and said, "Hey, I'm bowing out," and he was pissed. And I didn't realize this at the time, but the managers there are kind of rewarded, based on, they're kind of recruiters.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really, I didn't know that. I was just a 22-year-old kid.
Sure.
And I took a job for the federal government as a claims adjuster, Department of Veteran Affairs, because it was safe. It was in the city I wanted to live in. It had a little bit of a higher base salary, and I was like, "Oh, this will be more secure and just easier, right?" Just if that kind of shows where my state of mind was. Mm-hmm. I didn't really know what a claims adjuster was at that time. I didn't know anything. I was just kind of going to college, partying, and do what I had to do to get through. And got into that job out of college and hated it, and was looking to quit in like 2 weeks. I was like, I can't sit at a desk. I didn't know this is what it entailed, and it just wasn't for me. And so I kind of bounced around to a couple different companies, and was pretty much broke. And the guy at Federated came back around out of the blue about 2 years after college and was like, "Hey man, would you want to grab a coffee?" And I thought he'd never reach out to me again. And I always liked the guy, and so
So
we
wait,
grabbed a coffee.
This was 2 years after you gave him the thanks but no thanks.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like I said, I had bounced. I had that claims adjusting job. Then I went to a finance company, was doing sales, and this was in '08, and they
Mm-hmm.
folded up due to the economy after being in business 20 years. The company just said, "Hey, we're done." So that job went away. I was unemployed for like 2, 3 months, and then finally found a job with a manufacturer as kind of a sales manager, rep manager, and it was okay, but the pay sucked. And anyways, yeah. So this guy comes back around out of the blue, just shot me a message, and I took the coffee with him, and like I said, I was pretty much broke. I mean, I really I really was, and he showed me what they're paying, and I was like, okay, that's double what I'm making now. Like, how do I got to do this? And that was it. My mind was made up at that point. I mean, there was really, you know, so when I say I got into insurance for the money, it literally was it.
Yep.
So at
And
Federated, are the marketing reps at Federated? Is it sort of like Cincinnati, where your marketing rep is also your underwriter?
No, so you are more like an agent because you
Okay.
have underwriters you got to go to. You just do all the submissions and then send them to
Okay.
the underwriter, but you don't underwrite
So
anything.
you're almost like, to marketing rep, it's almost like an in-house marketer at an agency, sort of same role.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but you're a producer as well. You're out there beating the streets every day
Interesting.
trying to get
Okay.
people to let you quote.
You do realize nowadays there's like 3 definitions of marketing
Yeah.
rep in the
Yeah.
insurance
Yeah.
industry. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There's the marketing rep now that works for the agency, like Avery Hunt does for us, is social media and a lot of things related to agency. Getting the agency out there on social and that kind of thing. Then there's the marketing rep, who is your marketing territory manager that comes to your office once a month to check a box and calls you if you're not selling enough. And then there's the old school 80s marketing rep that would work for an agency, and their job is to help producers place business with the right carrier.
Yeah.
So and then now there's this new definition that he's talking about too. So this is more of an agent, internal agent kind of thing, right?
yeah. I mean, I would probably the better way to describe it on the podcast for people listening that aren't at Federated or weren't is just to say agent
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
right.
that's essentially what you were.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have an account manager or anything like that, or uh, so you are doing some of the service work,
Sure.
more involved on that front. But yeah, they were very particular about not using the term agent because
Mm,
we only could sell Federated's product. So that's
sure.
where, from like a legal standpoint, that's where that had come from.
Right.
Um,
But
but
then we trip and fall from that position, and we're at Federated for about 3.5 years, and then somehow, some way, we trip and fall into some old Marsh McClellan insurance here.
yeah, so that was kind of funny. Well, I didn't know anything about insurance, right? So I get in there, I do the year-long training
Yeah.
program. They had come out with a really high guarantee pay at Federated, so I took the job.
Right.
But got into it, started to like it, liked what I was doing, and got out in the field after a year of training, and then realized like, hey, I would rather have these good relationships I'm building. I can only offer one product, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I couldn't drink the Kool-Aid, and so nothing wrong with the company. I mean, they're a good firm. I have friends that still work there. Just for me, it wasn't my cup of tea.
Right.
And so at the same time, I was in a territory at Federated that I didn't want to be in, and my wife and I wanted to live more in the city, but then we just made the decision to move across the country, which is a whole other story. But we decided to move to Texas, and so I just opened up AM Best magazine, and I thought, oh, why not work at the biggest agencies, right? That's
Right.
where that makes the most sense to me. I didn't know anything, and so I just opened up AM Best and went right down the list: Marsh, Hub, Aon, whatever, and just started, emailing, calling people, the same way I do now, I guess. And then I had 2 people reach back out, and they were in Houston, and Marsh was the one that I got an offer from. So that's how I kind of got into the independent insurance side.
Now
away from the
now
captive.
you were with Marsh for a hot minute. I mean, 14 to 21. That's what is that? 7 years? Yeah, 7 years. So, what'd you learn at Marsh? What was the big takeaway when you left Marsh to? And we're going to get into that in just a second. Where you made the decision in 21 to kind of, I guess, go to more of a smaller boutique. I hate to say boutique, but smaller than Marsh, which everybody's smaller than Marsh for the most part. But what'd you learn? What'd you learn at Marsh? What was your big takeaway from 7 years over there?
There was, well, a lot, because I didn't know a lot about insurance. But my big takeaway,
It's great to be the biggest and the baddest. Is that one takeaway?
no, that's not a takeaway, I would say. And that's probably why I left, which I'll get to. But I think what I did learn a lot is the power of I don't want to use it. This word sounds so cheesy, but kind of human capital, or kind of that intellect. You got a lot of different people, man, across the country, and I would say they did a really good job of. At the point I was there, they were kind of bringing together all these offices, right, and kind of creating like a group think tank kind of thing. And so, like, anything you'd come across, like, there was someone who really, really knew what they were doing, right? Within amongst
a lot of experts
50,000.
in the niches that they wrote. They would have the Hub does the same thing where they'll I'll throw one out there. If you want to write and you're a Hub agency and you decide one day that you're going to write railroads, trains and things, they have a whole team of experts who, some of these people have been in that business 30, 40, 50 years that you can lean on to, help you secure that account, and also to, provide that confidence you need when you walk into that meeting to say, hey guys, this bunch behind me, this is all they do. And there's a lot of value in that. Am I right about that?
Yeah. No, I think there definitely is, and that helps a lot. I would say what I took more though than anything is the process of kind of approaching selling insurance more consultatively rather than transactionally, and so that's I took that and kind of blended it with just quoting versus super high level consulting, which I think they were trying to get us to approach the mid-market like, and I kind of blended the two. But I took some of the ways they would approach it, like just the questions you ask beyond just asking insurance questions, taking a step back, asking more high level questions, organizational questions. Where do you want the business to be in 3 years? What's your biggest challenge? What's holding you back and why? Kind of starting that way, which I think a lot of buyers were not used to in the mid-market space, and then blending it with kind of just, sometimes they could get a little bit too up in the, I think, intellectual, with it, where it's like, let's just make it practical for buyers as well.
Right. And so you got to answer this. These agents listening to this are going to be wildly interested in this next question. What would make you go from one of the top, biggest, baddest out there to I believe it's called the Christensen Group Insurance, which I'm sure still a big agency. Don't get me wrong, but it's not Marsh. What would make somebody like you move over there from where you've got a lot of resources at Marsh? What would make you do that?
So I realized about 4 years in to at Marsh, I realized, I was like, man, if I could do this, because I get calls from recruiters, and I was like, man, I'm kind of in too deep at that point, I thought. And I realized, and I would tell friends who were called me and asked about joining or whatever, I said, it's a good firm, but I said, if I could do it all over again, I would join a smaller or regional firm that has higher splits, maybe some equity, a little bit more autonomy, less of the corporate-y feel.
Yeah.
Because I realized that a lot of these clients that I'm working with, and when the size client I was working with on average was, say, 15 in revenue to 25 in revenue. Of course, there was a couple big ones, maybe 75 to 100, but most of my stuff was in that, let's just say, 10 to 30 space, right?
Right.
They just the resources weren't deployed on those type of firms, and
even with that size revenue, like a 25, like a big account sometimes wouldn't even have. It would have to be a massive account to get those resources.
Yeah, and that keeps going up. So now I have friends that still work at bigger agencies. That it used to be 50, then they it used to be 25 or higher. Then it went to, before I left, I think it was like 50.
What,
and then now I've heard it's more.
Did you say 25,000 in revenue or higher?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like, the way we compete against big agencies and the way we train our producers to compete against big agencies is to use what they're going to tell the customer about us against them. So they always try to outbid you.
Yeah.
That's what they do. And so what we tell the customers is we say, look, your account's, 25,000 in revenue. Okay. You're not even going to be in their top 500.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be in our top 10.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Especially in this coastal market where pretty much everything carrier and resource wise is an even playing field.
Correct.
Who do you think is going to pay better attention to you?
Right.
Yep.
And we have almost a 100% success rate with that pitch.
Did you hear what Micah said? He said that number, because he was there for 7 years,
Keeps going up.
keeps going higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, premiums keep going up.
Yeah. So now to get the specialized risk management group attention, what's that number today? 2025. 50?
Probably. I've heard, 50 for sure. I
Yeah.
would say is the floor.
Yeah.
But probably more 75 to 100 to get real, like, full blown attention.
What's a hey, let me ask you this. What's a house account at Marsh? These bigger, I call them smaller, bigger independent agencies. A lot of them will do this thing where if the revenue is $5,000 or less, it's the producer doesn't even keep the account. It's a house account. After the sale's made, it goes to a house account. What would that be at Marsh? What would a house account be there?
For sure, it was 5 or less
Yeah.
in revenue, but it probably is up to 10 now. And it depends. Like, let's say you're a producer and you wrote one before they kind of upped the limit, they might grandfather that into you. But if that guy ever leaves for whatever reason, that will just they'll probably, my guess is they would roll that into house, if it's below 10 or below, I would think. I know USI, I think is even 20 or less, so every agency is slightly different,
and so
they're all moving upstream.
And so now we move over to the Christensen group, where you probably, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's a little different feel. There's more autonomy. There's not as much of because guys, remember this: the bigger you get, the more premium you get, the bigger your agency gets, the more people you have, the more you are almost it's almost imperceptible, but at some point you turn into this corporate. It's like working for General Electric, basically. I mean, it's a corporate. Hell, you don't know everybody that's there. You don't know so much because it gets so big, and there's you got a human resource department, and we got to follow all these guidelines. And So I'm assuming you probably enjoy a little bit more freedom, a little bit more. I'll do it my way kind of thing.
Like
Am I right about that?
Impact,
yeah, sure.
At a Marsh.
Yeah.
You feel it more. And the cool thing with the agency I joined is we're 100% ESOP, which is 100% employee owned. So no private equity backing.
Was that a huge recruiting thing for you? Like, okay, the employees here own the agency.
Yeah, that was huge for me because if you're trying to grow a book in mid-market, to me, the importance of having a good service team around you is like second to none, and at Marsh, I had, I think, 15 different client managers just based on where accounts would fall, but nothing wrong with that model. I guess it's just, you'd see burnout, and that happens everywhere. I think in every agency, but I felt like, hey, if the service team can have more skin in the game, be rewarded, that's kind of cool. Plus, then personally, it made a huge difference looking at age 60, having equity, and that's the way I got my equities, through the ESOP. So it's it's a little bit different of a way, but it's still a nice, lucrative way to do it. But also have everyone else kind of share in that at the agency. So
what are y'all's thoughts on the house account thing? I remember when we first started Portal, I thought it was the below $5,000 in revenue or whatever the number is, was like the dumbest thing I'd ever heard.
Right.
And then once you get like 5 or 6 years into this, you understand, like, okay,
Yeah.
This is why people do this.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, there's a large buyer of insurance agencies now. If I said the name, everybody would know it. That if and I heard this secondhand, but if you have any account that's less than $5,000 in revenue that a producer is making renewals on, they don't buy those. They just get those for free if they buy your agency. They don't include those in the valuation. And I understand why people do it, because you take a 5,000 revenue account that's expecting the same service as a 50,000 revenue account, and you're paying a producer renewals on it. It gets tricky, But my whole thing is the part I always struggled with was there's an agency here locally that does this, and they just turn the accounts away. And we'll have customers call us pissed off that they didn't deliver this info in the right way. And so how do you...
That's a danger, by the way.
It is. How do you do that? And I have an idea of how you do it. How do you do that while also keeping a good customer experience and not seeming elitist to the customer? What have you seen, Micah, that firms that do this have done?
I would say
well?
I would think most of these agencies that do it probably don't talk about it to the end customer.
They just tell the customer they're not a good fit.
Well, no, I mean they may write it, but they probably leave out the part that
how do you
next year you're going to be dealing with
but
account
back to
manager.
the customer experience thing. How do if the producer's getting paid less, they're not going to give that account the right amount of
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, do you have inside sales that handles it? What's the makeup there?
I think of the bigger agencies, what they've done, and even our agency is kind of you create a small business unit where they essentially it's just your account
Inside
managers,
sales, sort of.
and the agents, in the client's eyes, they just see him as that's my agent,
right?
They don't know any better. I mean, that's kind of what they think and what they view him as. It's me myself personally. I always say this when I get referrals on some really small stuff. I'm like, and I don't mind writing small stuff if I think it has good upside, right?
Especially
I always say,
if it's a referral, Micah. If it's then it gets real tricky. If like a $500,000 revenue account sends you their buddy who's a really small, you're like, I don't want to piss. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's like writing an auto insurance for a large commercial account, and then Junior has an accident, the auto goes up, and you lose a huge account.
No, exactly. Yeah, like the way we do it, I think I want to say we get 100% for the first year or two, or 100% year one of that commission of that tiny account, and then it counts towards our book, but not necessarily we don't get paid on it. So it's
so that's exactly. I asked a friend of mine who has some experience in this recently that same question, and that's basically what he said. He said how you do it is the producer doesn't get whoever writes it does not get renewals on it. They just get a much higher first year commission. And a lot of people, I mean, especially a newer producer, they're going to be more short term focused. So they're not necessarily going to like poo-poo on that account,
right? Because
they're not getting renewals on it.
Higher commission first year, but no renewal. What would that percentage be?
He said 100%.
Oh wow.
I don't know about that
because you're talking small. I mean,
couple
$2,000 revenue.
Right.
We'll pay you and it's done. Then we own it, kind of. And I think your agency has to have a good process if you're going to take on that small stuff as a kind of a medium or bigger size shop.
You do.
Hey, Micah, just to give me a flavor of what we're talking about, I like to visualize things. I'm a very visual person. How many employees do we have at the Christensen Group?
Yeah, so we've grown pretty fast. We're up to 250.
Woo!
So we're not a mom and pop.
Little bitty 250 employee agency, huh?
Yeah, but we were 100 10 years ago, and it's all organic. So we're not out there scooping up agencies, and like I said, we're an ESOP, so it's a very different model.
Right. And so tell me this. It seems like you're kind of in the pocket now. Are you happy? Are you happy where you are?
Yeah. No, I'm extremely happy. Zero regrets.
And then at some point we partner with my boy. Don't know who he is, don't know his name, don't know anything about him, except I do know he played baseball at the University of Alabama. I know that.
Boo.
And my son's now about to start playing at Shelton State. He's a JUCO Bandit, which is the feeder program for the University of Alabama in baseball, but literally right down the street. But how'd y'all get together? How'd this happen? What happened to create the max revenue stuff that's happening right now?
We were both at Marsh McLennan.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Knew each other from that. Okay.
Well, he was in Louisiana.
Right.
I lived in Houston at the time. And, or actually just when we first talked, I was in Austin by that point, but he got my name from somebody who was like, hey man, I'm just trying to learn this industry. And they just, it's collaborative there. They try to pass names of producers who are doing okay. So they gave him my name, I guess. And he called me out of the blue one day and we just started chatting, and, that's how it all started. And I think his office was doing things a little bit differently than what we were doing in Houston and Texas. And so he kind of appreciated having that, a different approach to the way that insurance was being sold, because his agency had just kind of rolled up under the Marsh family, I guess you could say. So
wasn't it like the day after he started, they announced they sold the Marsh or something like that?
Yeah, it was the first day he showed up or something. They told him,
on board. Congrats, we own you now.
Yeah, exactly. So y'all basically known each other for give or take 8, 9, 10 years.
Probably about 6.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I got to ask, because I got lots of questions. What has been the unintended consequences? I can speak for Bradley and I on the unintended consequences of this podcast since we started it in June, July of 2017, which I don't know how many years that's been. But what's been the unintended consequences for you personally as being the co-host and the founder of the Max Revenue Show and the newsletter and all the stuff you guys are doing?
I would just say just awareness. People tend to, the industry is fairly small, but being on something like this or doing as you guys know, it just, it becomes really small. It feels like everybody kind of knows you, even people who don't know you. And
big industry, small community.
Yeah. And, LinkedIn was already kind of doing that for me before the max revenue thing, because I was starting to get my wife, and I was like, why are you taking these messages from all these producers and spending 30 minutes on the phone with these guys? I was like, man, I don't know. I just feel bad. I'm trying to help people out. I got some spare time, whatever. And so that's what it was back in like 2020, 2021. And then, when we did the podcast in 22, that kind of just poured gasoline on everything, I would say.
Sure.
So yeah, that's kind of been the extent of it so far. From a recruit, it's funny for our agency. It's kind of helped with some recruiting and some of that.
Yeah, I could see that.
I would say probably 80% of the job applications we get here at Portal are podcast listeners. Yeah,
no, it's incredible. I think every agency out there should almost. The CEO, the president, if they're a smaller agency, should be doing something locally where they're getting their name out there, or there's just a lot of talent out there that you'll have access to.
I think if your goal is to sell commercial insurance in a local market, one of the best things you could do is start some sort of podcast either in that niche or in that area. If your goal is to be the insurance guy or gal in that town, and literally all you do is you interview your prospects.
Yeah, exactly. Business owners, stuff like that.
They're gonna feel, even now where it seems like everybody has a podcast, they're still gonna feel so like important.
Yeah, inclusive and
dude, you're gonna like, if you do it the right, unless they're just like a straight up jerk or you have a brother-in-law problem where the brother-in-law handles the insurance, they're going to give you a shot on their account if you handle it the right way.
Sure.
You can't go in there with that intention because they're going to be able to see through your eyeballs, but it's going to naturally come up.
Absolutely. I've been saying this for years. I'm going to tell you all the way to do this. Start a Facebook page for your community. And for Bradley, it would be like Explore Mobile or something, something. But then, not really have any kind of insurance slant at all to it. It's more like, if you're moving to Mobile, if you're coming to Mobile on vacation, this is the Facebook page for you. and we're just going to put post after post and video after video on this Facebook page of local businesses. Me interviewing the ghost bookstore owner down the street, and a business on Dolphin Street, and our friend Panini Pete. And you've got these 5 to 10 minute posts and clips, and then you've got stuff on there for people to go find. And I think that would just be a natural progression of getting a bunch of business that way without even really mentioning insurance at all. Maybe every now and then you throw a portal video in there, but I just always
that becomes the marketing for your agency, the
100%.
social media content for your agency.
100%.
You get, from a long form video, you not only do you get short form videos, you get blogs, you get the podcast, you get audio snippets. There's a million different areas you can go with it. And then there's going to be some episodes where insurance comes up on the air, and you can clip that and that is way more interesting to consumers than you standing in front of a camera and talking about workers' comp experience mods.
Yep. No.
Hey, Micah.
That's so true.
Micah,
Yep.
Can I have secret time for just a second? Nobody's going to hear this. Nobody listens to this anyway. So, secret time. Okay. I was having a conversation with somebody last week, and I don't want to say her name because of confidentiality reasons, but it rhymes with Carrie Wallace. Okay.
Smary Smallis.
I was having a conversation with Smary Smallis last week, and she and I were talking about sales training. Okay. Mm-hmm. And agency sales training. And we got to talking, and I said, Smary, I said, I don't know who I would hire in the realm of independent agency world. I don't know who I would hire to do sales training for my agency force that I feel like I know David Carruthers has got Killing Commercial, and that's fantastic, and it is a great course. And for the agent or producer that wants to get into commercial and learn it soup to nuts, that is certainly an avenue they probably need to explore, right? Killing Commercial. It's great. And David he'll bend over backwards 10 times to help you. But I'm talking about like that agency consultant that comes in, meets with each one, develops a sales plan, I don't know that there's anybody out there that does that. Is there, Bradley? Is there anybody that is just in general, like whether it's commercial, personal lines, that you can hire to do that type of thing? Because she and I were racking our brain, and neither one of us could think of somebody. I'm telling you, I'm not so sure that's not max revenue. You guys, especially on the commercial side, I can tell your stuff. Your newsletter is fantastic. I try to get it to all my producers. Now, the chances of them reading that are almost non-existent because books are like kryptonite to them. They're not going to read much. They're too busy doing their thing and picking their mean-ass kids up from school and, doing everything except selling anything. So what are your thoughts on that? Am I wrong about that? Is there some great sales guru we've got in the industry that could come in and turn my sales force around?
There's a lot of people that think they are.
Well, I know that. That's what I'm getting at. I know there's a lot of people that think they are.
Most of them live on Twitter.
Right. Well, exactly. Or, you hire them and then you pay them $5,000. And the next thing you know, you're not dealing with them.
Everybody
you're dealing with the person
the coach. Or,
it's not me. It's going to be the blah, blah, blah guy that I'm just sitting here thinking, if either one of y'all know somebody, please, I'll write the check. I'm not worried about that.
There is a market. I will add to this.
I think there's white space is what I'm trying to say.
There is white space for a fractional sales manager.
Correct.
That covers.
This man understands
more than just, because, like your Killing Commercial and your max revenue stuff. It's, it's very commercial focused.
Exactly.
There is white space for an outsourced sales manager that covers sort of all of insurance.
Right.
Similar to what Kelly Donahue Piro does for account managers.
Yep.
And she probably could do it, but I think there is certainly a space for that.
Yeah.
The problem is you're going to have to really know your stuff. And the problem,
and have a resume of success.
I'd love to get Micah's thoughts on this. Is the problem is this industry is so weird that it's hard to teach someone how to do something if you are not also doing it or have recently done it. And you get some of these consultants, and by the way, my friends that are listening to this that are consultants, I'm not talking about any of you, but you get some of these consultants that it's been 8 years since they've done something.
Correct. It's so much has
They're
changed.
sort of removed a little bit, and that's one of the reasons why I think the Max Revenue deal and our podcast, or in David's podcast and other folks, is so popular, is because we're actually, like, as soon as I walk out of these two doors, I have to go run an agency.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Like, but that also hinders the end product. Like, if somebody were to ask me to be their outsourced sales manager right now, not saying I could do that, but let's assume I could, the price point would have to be so high for it to be worth it for me, because 100%. You know what I mean? So there's a weird dichotomy between, like, an actual consultant that can help you and somebody that's just taking your money and spilling, David Goggins lines in your ear all the time.
And by the way, Michael, before you answer this, I want to add to what Bradley is. I have violently agree with it. You get me, Bradley. You speak my love language. Thank you. And what you said about some kind of fractional sales manager kind of thing would be fantastic. Here's the other thing. It's just like you damn kids. I can say something to my son about baseball. Dad, you don't know what you're talking about. And then he goes up to Performance 108 in Knoxville, Tennessee, works for the entire Tennessee baseball team, and they say the same damn thing, and he'll come back and go, you know what Coach Beaker said to me? He said blah, blah, blah. Yeah, son, I said that shit last week, and you told me to go take a jump off a short pier. Kind of the same thing with your salespeople. If Scott says it, it's just noise. But if Micah says it, then they run back to me and go, you're not going to believe what Micah said. This is the most unbelievable thing I've ever heard in my life. Yeah, I've been saying that shit for 6 months. Yeah. But you won't listen to me, so let me hire somebody that maybe you will listen to. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, and I think you're spot on with that assessment there. And also, but to Bradley's point, yeah, I mean, that's the struggle. Like, I've had offers from some agencies like, hey, we'll pay you $30,000, come on and be our fractional salesperson. But I don't really have I'm so focused on being a producer right now. And so it's like,
you're like, that's one good account for me. I'd rather do that.
Yeah. And like, I don't have to fly up to Canada or whatever, over to New York and all that. And so it's like, I don't really want to be traveling, flying all around. That's kind of why I became an insurance agent, obviously. So it's like every time Trey or Max and I have talked about it, it's like, there's a lot of good money I'm making right now in insurance and a lot of opportunity, and there's no cap on that.
Right.
And it affords me the lifestyle I want to live from, like, a freedom. And so then why we don't have any desire to necessarily be that fractional, do that consulting, right? Or like Randy Schwantz or something, like, to go that route and go around to agencies and fly all over and meet with them and coach and consult. But yeah, I do think there is a gap in the market. There is people out there that do it. Hell, our agency pays a consultant to coach her, right? We get on their calls weekly. We have a couple meetings a year. So there's a gap out there. And I think the struggle is, like you said, is that, man, a lot of the people doing that, though, have not sold, or they're not in the trenches. And that is why your podcast, our podcast, Carruthers, that's why people that's the number one thing I hear from our guests or our listeners is like, man, you guys talk about stuff that I was just going through that yesterday. Sure. So, well, yeah, because we're going through it too. So,
well, that's like with us, like, we literally, like, the content on this podcast is structured to, especially the ones that Scott and I do together, which is he and I, it's just what we're going through.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
last year's, I remember somebody on Twitter was like, I'm so tired of hearing about acquisitions on podcasts. And I was like, well, that's like what I'm going through right now. Like I'm buying agencies, so I'm talking about it. Like, I'm sorry. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
wait a couple years, it'll be something else.
Right.
You know, I'll
Yep.
tell you who could do it. I'll tell you right now who could do it.
Play. I think I know who you're going to say, but I want you to hear what you want to.
If I gave you 2 guesses, you would get it.
Can I have one guess
Sure.
before you say it?
Yeah.
Okay. And this has not been edited, so it's not like we
Yeah.
magic tricked it. Billy Wagner.
Yep. That's what I was going to say.
That's exactly who I was thinking.
Billy Wagner.
But see, here's the other problem, guys. Micah, we're just talking now, okay? I wish you were right here in a chair and we was drinking a Diet Miller right now. Here's the other problem. Billy Wagner's great. Billy Wagner could do it. Billy Wagner, people would love Billy Wagner. People would listen to Billy Wagner. But here, remember this. So you hire Billy, you pay him whatever to come to your agency and train your salespeople. Okay, we just went through January the 1st, and everybody has their New Year's resolution to go to the gym and look like Brad Pitt in Fight Club, okay? Yeah. Here's the problem. Everybody has the willingness to go do that. In other words, everybody wants to go to Anytime Fitness and become 130-pound Brad Pitt in Fight Club with the broad shoulders and the washboard abs.
You know, I've never seen Fight Club.
That's your fault. Here's the problem. Nobody has the commitment.
Yeah.
There's willingness, meaning I'm going to go down and I'm going to join Anytime Fitness and I'm going to look like Brad Pitt in Fight Club. But nobody has the commitment. So you hire him, and here comes the problem. When he calls you on that random Tuesday at 4:00 and says, Scott, you got 2 people that I don't give a damn how hard you pull that leash to get that horse to that water, they ain't going to drink it.
I'll tell you. So Micah may not know this. So I used to own a marketing company that we did content creation for insurance agents. And the singular reason I sold it, and I came out pretty good in the sale, but the singular reason I sold it was because, and anybody who's in marketing will tell you this. Johnny Gwynn would tell you the same. Johnny's going to be listening to this. He'll agree. We could create the perfect piece of content that generated leads.
Hey, Johnny, if you agree, say, yes, Bradley, I agree. Put that in the podcast. That'll be great.
You could create the perfect piece of content that generated leads or awareness or whatever the goal was.
Right.
If the sales team couldn't close it,
100%.
the marketing company got blamed.
100%.
And I got tired of dealing with that. And
that's
I was like, you know
exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you hire this consultant, you pay him, $30,000 a month.
He's awful. He don't know what he's doing. Yeah. Well, it might be that you folks don't want to do what he's telling them to do.
Well, and that's where I think if you did this, sorry, this is going completely off the rails, Micah.
Sorry.
If you did this,
no, that's good.
If you did this, what I would do if I was going to do it is I would be really high ticket, and I would only take 5 clients. And I would not physically, but virtually work in each agency 1 day a week. So you don't have to rely
Did you say physically?
Virtually.
Okay. So you're not having
and maybe visit every now and then.
Yeah.
But basically,
maybe once a month
you don't have to, if you're relying on the agency owner to hold the people accountable to the things you're training them on, it's not going to work. But if the sales manager is doing the training and they're the ones holding them accountable, and they're this third party that really doesn't give a crap if the person is happy or not.
Right.
I think that could work. And then what you do, you get your 5. It's a year contract, and then
$30,000 a year. That's $150,000 a year.
You bring on somebody else, an employee who you teach your process to. Then you can add 5 more, et cetera. But basically, each person would only work with 5 accounts. That way, it's very focused.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the way I would do it. But to transition a little bit, Micah, you're a big cold caller, right? Isn't that your jam? Or not?
Yeah,
maybe
unfortunately, that's kind of my. That's just the process I've used.
You know, Micah, I want you to get into that because I was listening to another insurance podcast the other day with another agent who has a podcast on Spotify, and he was talking about how anti-cold call he was. He was, I will
Who was
never.
it? Just say who it is.
It was James Jenkins.
Okay.
Yeah. He
okay.
was like, I will, it was basically like, if you're listening to this, then you know how anti cold call I am. And I thought, okay. Anyway, that's here nor there. I'm just, and he's not the only one. I've heard other people be like, no, don't cold call people.
Yeah. Well, because they'll say probably meet them through an association, get a referral, get some red hot introduction, some way other than cold calling.
Sure.
Which I'm not opposed to any of that stuff. Man, it has worked really well. All I can say is, for me personally, the numbers are the numbers, and I've done extremely well. And it's simple to me. There's just no complexity to it. Mm-hmm. It's not fun. It's not glamorous, but it works. And so here I am 10 and a half years later as an independent agent doing it. And even counting my days at Federated, it was cold walking into places. It's worked really well for me.
Micah, it's the fastest way to get from 0 to 100. All the others, there's a million ways to skin a cat. All the other stuff works. The networking, the social media, the trade show events, that sort of, all that works, but that's much more longer tail process. The cold calling and making outbound dials is the fastest way to get there. But I think doing the other stuff with that helps because you can sort of phase it out after time.
For sure. Yeah. And that's probably my weakness. And I'll be, I'm always honest with people, like when they ask about it, like I still cold call heavily. I don't network basically at all. And it's just the way I prefer to do things. I don't want to be going out to happy hours and all that other stuff. I just don't really care to do that. Maybe I'm just too antisocial, but so for me, it's worked really well and I enjoy it. And then I use LinkedIn as kind of my networking as well. But
you don't want to pick up bops at Chamber of Commerce events? What's wrong with you?
Hey, Micah, the last 5 minutes of this podcast, we are going to do what my life's mission is: help insurance agents any way we can. So here comes the Insurance Guys podcast hot 5 questions for Micah that I need every agent to get out a pen and paper, pull over on the side of the road, and write this shit down, because Micah's about to hit you with some truth bombs here to help you grow your agency. We are here for one reason and one reason only: help insurance agents any way we can. So here comes the hot 5 questions for Micah. Micah, question number 1. On an average day as a producer of commercial insurance, you obviously time block some certain hours. So this is a 2-part question. What are your best hot hours to cold call for you? And how many cold calls do you do in a day so that when you go home, you go, you know what? I did it today. I did the damn thing. What's the answer to those two-part question? What's your prime time to cold call?
So about 10 to noon.
Okay, 10 to noon. And then what would, in that 2-hour span, how many calls do you, when you go home at night, you go, I did the damn thing today. I'm proud of myself. If nobody may not have gotten anything out of it today, but I'm proud that I picked that damn phone up and I did what I do. How many calls would that be?
Yeah, so let me add to that: 10 to noon and then 2 to 4. So about 2 different sessions.
And are you time blocking, like don't care hell or high water, 10 to 2 and 2 to 4? That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, my number one goal every day is prospect. Client needs come in, take care of clients. But other than that, that's it. So, and I always feel if I got nothing on my calendar that day, that's then all focused on prospecting.
Okay.
I don't have time, anything going on. And then 40 calls is kind of my number where if like I hit 40, man, I feel good. You can make more. But I feel like you can also burn yourself out pretty easily.
Stop right there.
Go insane.
Stop right there. 40 calls. Now, those 40 calls. Now, is that 40 calls include the times when someone either you leave a voicemail or you get a gatekeeper who says that Miss or Mr. Jones isn't in, but can I leave a message? Does that include, are those calls included in those 40, or does it have to be 40 people that I spoke to today and said, blah, blah, blah?
No, 40 calls. So yeah, man, I would love to have 40 conversations in a day, but that's not happening.
Okay.
I wish it happened.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. Okay.
Yep.
Here comes question number 3, 5-part question. Teaching y'all something right now, guys. I hope you're writing this shit down. So we time block. He goes from 10 to 12, 2 to 4. He will not stop until he gets to 40 calls. Now, that does include times when he leaves a voicemail or, hey, this is Stephanie, I'm the receptionist at blah, blah, blah business. I'm sorry, Mr. Jones isn't here, but give me your name and number and I'll have him call you. Or let me give you his email address. You can email him, whatever. That's part of the 40 calls. Now, here comes the next one. You get the decision maker or the person that you're trying to get in touch with on the phone. Give me your opening statement to that person. And we'll say, I'm that person. You're trying to get in touch with Scott Howell because he is the decision maker for an account that you've looked up, you've done some research on, you figured out, hey, this account I'd like to have. What do you say to Scott when you get? Well, I answer the phone. Yep. Hey, Micah, there's a Micah on the phone with you. He says he's a Christian group. Okay, yeah, put him through. Go.
Okay.
Go.
Yeah. Hey, Scott.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, Micah, Christensen Group.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Micah.
And Scott, I don't know if you're in charge of this as the owner of the company there, but are you in charge of the insurance, or is that role put under someone else?
Actually, we obviously have board of directors, CEO, but yes, I'm the risk management, the president of risk management for us. Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hey, obviously I know you guys got an agent y'all work with. I'm not really interested in quoting, but I was curious, what do you guys do from a due diligence side of things? What's that process look like on your end?
So let's stop right there. You're not doing the whole, I'm sorry to be bothering you. I hope this is a good time. I'm sorry that, I'm calling you out of the blue. None of that. You're just getting to the getting.
I stopped all that. Now, one thing so when I say, hey, Scott, yeah, and I say it's Micah with Christensen, I will pause.
Sure.
And so based on, if you might say, who's this? Or I can kind of feel some kind of awkward feeling there. I'll be like, hey, man, we've never spoke before in case you're trying to figure out who I am. Oh, okay, I got you. And it depends who you're calling. If I'm calling a construction guy, I'm going to talk differently than I'm talking to a controller at, a manufacturing company. But yeah, I ditched the whole permission-based opener and all that stuff. I just didn't find a need for it or a use for it. So
what you're asking, the due diligence question, is it's an open-ended question that piques their interest.
Correct. It's hopefully something different, right?
Yeah. So that leads me to question number 4. You've called Scott, and I'm the risk management president for a pretty large outfit that's, an account that you feel like you would like to write, right? Correct? Mm-hmm. And so that first call was Scott as the risk management guy, and I've asked the question that you just asked. So now it's an open-ended question. So Scott's, giving you some input. You're writing that down or recording it, however you do it. And what's your end goal right there? What's your end goal of that phone call? Is it to get him to agree to let you be a part of the process? Or is it just I'm just calling you today because I'd love to set up a time for us to sit down kneecap to kneecap and talk?
That's a good question. And it's something my goal used to be get a meeting, right?
Sure.
And I was setting up a lot of crappy meetings.
Right.
Because I think you can kind of, or people cancel on you, right?
Strong arm them on the phone, and
they're like, they kind of do that.
They just want to get off the phone, so they're like, "Yeah, sure, you talk to my secretary, or whatever."
Yeah. So my goal is to have a conversation, man, and it's kind of like
get in the boat.
Most of my wins come on the follow up, so I don't really care if I book a meeting right now. If I can just get a little conversation going, and they're like, "Man, I sense they're really happy," or whatever, timing's off a bit, does it make sense to me for me to follow up with you at all, or what? I know you got a relationship.
That's a great line. Does it make sense for me to follow up?
Yeah. And honestly, people just, sometimes you peel back those layers and the call warms up after they talk for a couple minutes.
Sure.
And then maybe I don't really care. I guess my goal is ultimately just to have a conversation, and I don't know where it's going to go.
One
if
reason
they
he's so
love their
successful.
agent,
One
good for
reason you're
them.
so successful. I can tell your tonality with these people is almost like, I don't give a shit. You do it great. If you do, what have I always said for 7 years, guys? Some will, some won't. God bless. Who's next? That's kind of your tonality right now. It's like, does it make sense for us to follow this up, or am I spinning my wheels here? Because if I am, I got 39 other people call.
Yep.
And I think that almost, it's the hot girl in the bar. You don't talk to her, you talk to her friend and be like, oh, bitch, I don't even want to talk to you. Well, guess what happens? Now she wants to talk to you. She's like, wait a minute, every other guy in this bar is buying me drinks. This guy's not even paying me any attention. He's got his back turned to me. Is it kind of that? Isn't that kind of what we're talking about?
I think it could be. For sure, tonality is huge.
Yeah,
I mean, you don't want to
absolutely.
come across as desperate, and that's what we talk about in our course that we have, is like tonality, mindset. How you approach that makes a huge difference.
Correct.
Versus, begging for a meeting or coming across desperate or trying to strong arm people or be
Commission
slick.
breath.
Yeah, just shoot them straight.
All right, next question, last question. This is question number 5. You get Scott on the phone. You get me talking. We're having a great conversation. I'm sure you have a time limit. Do you have like an egg timer or something? Because what I've always heard is 15 minutes. You can't keep somebody that's super busy on the phone for 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes, right? But what if Scott says back to you, well, Micah, I appreciate you calling, and, it's January the 6th today. I'll tell you this, our insurance policy right now, we're with Marsh, and that renewal, that expiration of that policy is not until September of 2025. Mm-hmm. So what is your response to that? Now you've got an X date, right? So I'm assuming that you're in your mind thinking, well, this is a guy I need to probably call back around July 1st time period, maybe the 15th of July. What are you saying right there?
Yeah, well, so I would just say, and my time frame is usually about 4 months out. So let's just say that puts us at April, May, and it's January.
Yep.
So I'm just going to say, so I guess, would it make sense for me to follow up with you in May this year?
Yeah, sure.
Since you renewed, would that make sense? Or if not, just let me know. No big deal. But I don't know if you had plans to maybe do some due diligence, have a conversation, get another perspective.
It's perfect. How easy was all that? Let me ask you a question. I want to ask you a serious question. Have you ever cold called someone and they murdered you?
No, not yet.
That has not happened. So
not
you're
yet.
telling me of the thousands of people you've called, nobody's ever murdered you. Nobody's ever bombed your home. Nobody's ever come over and held your family hostage. So what you're saying is nobody's going to die, right?
That's correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understood that. All right, I'm going to leave you guys with one thing. Mike, I need you to hear this. Got a friend of mine that's pretty high up in Marsh, okay? Let's just secret time for a minute. And I asked him one time, I said, I Protect Insurance wants to partner with Marsh. What's the biggest reason why I should partner with Marsh or partner with one of these other global insurance agencies that have all the stuff and the resources and the people and the stuff and the programs and all this? He said, Scott, I'm going to tell you why. Because when I walk into a large commercial account, a large revenue account, a $500,000 account in revenue, not premium, revenue. Mm-hmm. I walk up to the 25th floor. Well, first I check in at the bottom with my team, and we walk up and we go get on the elevator and we go up to the 25th floor, and there's the big boardroom and the mahogany desk that's 63 feet long, and there's 14 people sitting there with Brooks Brothers suits on. Okay. Huge account. This is an account that would, probably bigger than a lot of agencies are. The reason you want to work with Hub or a Marsh or a Gallagher, one of these big firms, is what you're doing when you walk in with the horsepower you have behind you and that name Marsh on your letterhead and the documentation that you're handing out, and you're talking about what you're doing, and you let your experts talk about their thing, is what you're giving that person that's making that final decision is a get out of jail free card if things don't go right. In other words, it's giving that person the air cover if something were to happen to say, look, guys, I went with Marsh. They're the biggest and the baddest. They're one of the biggest firms in the global firms in the world. You can't blame me that they screwed this up. You're giving that person air cover to keep their job, to keep their career, their big, check coming in. And that is the biggest reason he said that you would choose to go with a Marsh over a small firm like a I Protect, or I don't want to say small because the Christensen Group's not small, but smaller, or a Portal Insurance. What do you say to that?
I think that there's some truth to that, possibly. I've never been a buyer, but I can see that. So I'm not going to say that doesn't make sense. But if you're a producer listening to this, I would just say, great. I mean, if that's the kind of stuff you want to write, I just didn't want to. I don't want to be in boardrooms. I don't want to play politics.
Right.
I want to go help real businesses out there that are paying between, $75,000 to $500,000, maybe up to $1 million for insurance.
Sure.
And then I guess what? I sleep good at night too, because if I lose an account, I'm not sitting here having an ulcer,
This
if my $500,000 revenue account goes, and I get higher splits anyways. So I'm probably making more as a producer writing a $250,000 account than the guys writing a $500,000.
Right. Now let me ask you one last question, then I got to let you go. You got a doctor's appointment because you're, like me, I'm 53. I stay sick all the time. I got gout right now. Gout is an arthritic condition that gets brought on. My big toe's about that big around right now. The reason I get gout is I have a bunch of people in my agency that aren't selling insurance. And that is how you get gout, is if you haven't salespeople who aren't selling, it creates so much stress and tension that you start getting an arthritic condition where uric acid builds up because of the actual hatred and the wanting to murder somebody grows so much inside your body that you start developing this condition called gout. It's medical fact. You can look that up on Google. What's your niche? You mind telling us? I'd love to know. What's your favorite?
Yeah, and then he's got to go.
I know he's got to go to the doctor.
Yeah, construction. And to be a little bit more nichey from there, I'd say ground down. So I do a ton of heavy construction, concrete, street and road, utility, drilling. Probably makes up the 80%.
Well, no. So listen, here, I hate contractors. They ain't nothing I hate worse than a contractor. They lie, they cheat, they steal. They'll tell you anything you want to hear. They ain't nothing to them to just throw out these wild ass numbers, and then they get their audit at the end of the year because every construction business is GL's getting audited, and all of a sudden, this tax return says you made $4 million last year. You told me you did 400,000. Oh, I don't remember saying that. Anyway, I have a sneaky suspicion though the accounts he's writing are the big boy accounts, the Reed construction type folks that are earth movers, multi-million-dollar construction firms who actually have in-house counsel, in-house accountants. They're not doing Ricky Bob's dump truck that's with Geico right now that only has liability, and he's thrown rocks up on 14 cars. I kind of doubt he's doing that. So that's a little different bailiwick right there, right? You're actually going after the Brassfield and Gories of the world who are actually building the high rise in downtown New York, or, major construction firms.
Yeah. I mean, major. Yeah. I mean, typically the guys I'm doing could be subs, though. They're not huge. Yeah. They could be as small as 3 million, 4 million in revenue, up to 50 to 100. So, I mean, it's a wide array. But
but if you get to that point as a construction firm, it's probably because somebody there is doing the right stuff. They're doing it the right way. They're actually, anyway, go see the doctor. I love you. This might be the most informative podcast we've ever done. And I am so blessed and humbled that you came on today. If there's anything, do you have his cell number? Can I get it from?
I don't.
Well, son of a bitch. It's okay. I'll find you. Ain't nothing for me to find you.
I think it's on my LinkedIn.
There you go. All right. Well, I'll be in touch. I want to talk offline a little bit more, but hey, I hope everything goes well at the doctor today. And thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm going to shut us down as I do every time. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a fantastic podcast. I hope everybody got something out of this. Go follow. Oh, and by the way, Micah, before you go, tell them how they get the newsletter. Tell them how they can go see the show, Max Revenue Show.
Yeah, Spotify, YouTube channel. Just type in Max Revenue Show. Subscribe to the newsletter. Follow us on LinkedIn. Buy the Producer Playbook if you want a $200 course that talks about everything cold calling and soup to nuts, how to write business. So there's my pitch.
Thank you, sir. Guys, you were listening to the Insurance Guys podcast. And as I end every episode, rewards come from action, not discussion. Get your ass out from behind that desk today. Stop shuffling paperwork around on your desk. Stop doing TPS reports. Stop doing all the shit that don't matter. Go make 40 calls a day. Call your niche. Do what Micah said to do. It's not hard. If you heard him say this, he has not been murdered yet for cold calling people. His family has not been held hostage. Nothing bad has happened. Go do it. Go make money for your family, for your wife, for your husband, for your kids' college fund, for your parents and your in-laws that are struggling out there like mine are, who barely had money for Christmas and gave me a Mopar cap, which I'm going to wear in the next podcast, for Christmas this year. They ain't got no damn money. They can't pay their bills. Hell, anyway, go make money for them. Write good business for the agencies that you represent, and write good business for the carriers that you represent. Bradley Flowers, I love you.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Micah.
Micah, we'll
Appreciate
see you,
it, guys.
brother. Good luck. Guys, you were listening to the Insurance Guys podcast, and we love each and every one of you. Thank you so much for being a part of our family. We'll see you back here real soon. Take care.